Okay, we are here today with Mr. Karl Buchanan, GM at the Cary Lifetime Fitness Facility, discussing the daily huddle. My point in this is so that you guys can understand how he constructed the daily huddle and how he's improved via the template that he uses, and how his department heads now have a better understanding of the business. And then we'll talk about the true overall aspect of the business and how it's impacted this club here in Cary and the turnaround that it has. So Karl, in just about 3 minutes, can you give us your background real quick?
Yeah, it's I guess probably where I'll start is from my Army background. Fortunate or unfortunate, I had the opportunity to work with probably one of the best leaders in the world, and that was General Dave Petraeus. I was in the Army, and General Petraeus was the first boss that I had, and from that point, Petraeus kind of took me under his wing, if you would, and took my career through the Army. I served with General Barry McCaffrey in Desert Storm. I was able to receive the Bronze Star that was pinned on me by a gentleman by the name of Joe Bartow, who really helped me also, not only in the Army, but also developed me in some leader skills that we'll get into here shortly. I ended up leaving the Army, and I went with Pfizer Pharmaceuticals. It became one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. Was there for 13 years. Had this wild hair that I would start my own health and fitness club. I started it with one athlete and sold it about 6 years later with about 6,000 athletes. It was one of the largest multi-sport training facilities, being privately held, probably up on the East Coast, and we trained very high-level athletes, the Carolina Hurricanes, Rick DiPietro, Jason Blake, a lot of professional athletes would come through, and we trained in multi-sports. I ended up selling that and went back to Joe Bartow, and Joe was running a company that really looked at organizational development, design. We worked with a lot of C-suite individuals, the CEOs, CFOs, and it was all about process improvement. It was all about what do we need to do to get companies engaged. And when I say companies, I'm talking about getting the employees engaged, building dream teams, and obviously ultimately leading to customer engagement. From there, I worked there for 4 years as an executive vice president, and decided that, wow, that was just so much travel. I was on the road about 6 days a week. Decided that it was time to put my roots back here in Raleigh, and met Derek, and obviously had an opportunity to come in as a part of Lifetime Fitness, and that's kind of my career.
So Karl, let's talk about the daily huddle and why you feel it is important outside of the fact that it's a company expectation.
Great question, Derek. I think that the way I am looking at the huddle is probably a little bit different than most general managers, and I'm going to start with how I was onboarded. My onboarding process was, before I even walked into a club, I spent 90 days out in the field and had the opportunity to look at the good, bad, and the ugly. And what I found was the biggest disconnect was how people were doing the huddles. And I think it was, I could see just that. I saw clubs that had huddles that had parts that absolutely were spot on and world class. They were best in class huddle pieces. On the other hand, they were not connected with what other clubs were doing. So for me, what I found with the huddle is it revolved around two things. It revolves around alignment, that being what are we doing at the club level that drives the alignment from BA all the way down through yourself and down to not only the general managers, but it drives BA's message from the CEO of the company all the way down to the lowest level of leader that we have, and even our team members. So that's one. The second is accountability. I believe, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that a huddle is your form of accountability in the club. And it's a way to keep the metrics in front of every single leader that you have. Derek, I use this analogy with the people here. The first thing I do when I walk into a football game is I look at the scoreboard. And that scoreboard is really the metrics of the game. And to me, this huddle is the metrics. It's the metric piece. And I want to talk a little bit later about this scorecard, if you call it, our huddle template. But really, the huddle is two things. It's alignment and it's accountability. And that was the disconnect that I was seeing as I was going out in this onboarding period. And I thought if I could ever get that together, I could actually drive BA's mission all the way down.
So Karl, that's great, and you tied in some of the key components of why you feel it's important, even though it's a company expectation. So let's talk about what you walked into in Carey and why you chose the direction that you did.
Yeah. I guess it goes back to the last question on alignment and accountability. The first thing I noticed when I walked in here was I had a bunch of silos, that everyone was doing their own little thing and it was all about themselves. And I'm a firm believer that when you look at businesses today, successful businesses don't make money in silos. Successful businesses are ones that understand that when you go into a company, you actually make company across every one of the silos. And something that is I think it's a kudo to Lifetime is the entire MEP process. I've worked with companies, Derek, from ExxonMobil, their C-suite, to Northrop Grumman, Newport News, one of the largest shipbuilders in the world, Ball Manufacturing, Anheuser-Busch. And I can tell you, one of the most impressive things is that if you look at the reason we do this connectivity, this MEP, it's to align the businesses not only from point of sale, but it aligns them, it gives you the opportunity to align your businesses and your silos, if you would, like this. So you're making money in every single silo. You're tying the silos together. And kudos to this company. Companies that are 3, 4, 5 times bigger than Lifetime, they don't have a process that's as seamless as our MEP process. And that's one of the very first things I noticed when I came in. But what I noticed was that people didn't really utilize the MEP process as it was almost like kind of a pencil whip deal. And if we go through there and understand really what that engagement process is and how important it is to get the people engaged right off the bat, it would be huge. Reference here, it wasn't happening in Carey. I had leaders that were marching to the beat of their own drum. They weren't aligned. There was zero accountability. I remember, Derek, the first thing I said is we're going to have 8:30 huddle. And you're going to be here, and if you don't want to be here, then you're not a member of the team. So the situation that I walked into was a bunch of rumors that were being spread. There was always, they're the victim of something that was occurring. It didn't matter if you didn't make it to a meeting on time. It didn't matter if you didn't hit your number. It didn't matter if you didn't know your numbers, because there's always tomorrow. And you know, that part of accountability and that part of alignment had to be created absolutely immediately. And I knew if I could get one person to get on board with that, then the next person and the next person, they would all start following. And you and I spoke about it. I knew in this process I was going to take some casualties, and we did. But we can talk about that, you know, as we go.
So Karl, let's go back to this daily huddle, because one of the things I noticed very early on is that it is exactly what you did, a daily huddle. Now, some of the GMs choose not to do the huddle daily, they do it through other means.
Right.
Why do you feel it's important to do it daily, and what type of pushback did you get from your DHs at the start?
When we went in, that's a great question. I've always related the fact that business is like a team sport, and the gentleman I used to work with Joe Bardo, we had a business relationship with the Fuqua Business School, and had the opportunity to go watch Coach K conduct a practice. And one of the things Coach K pointed out was that business is a team sport. And if you think about just that, good teams practice over and over and over, and they run drills over and over and over to the point that it's second nature. So for me, if I came in and I did a huddle once a week, or if I did a huddle 3 times a week, it's not going to give me the repetition or the practice, and my department heads the practice to really understand what their business is. So that was the purpose of this. I wanted every day, I wanted where we could just drill it down every single day, and it would become repetition for them. So it is. Business is a team sport. Good teams practice all the time. They do the same drills over and over and over.
Fantastic.